Hey, what's up guys? Today we're going to talk about z-index in CSS. Z-index is very important to understand if you are learning CSS. When I started out, I did not really know how z-index worked. All I knew was that if you increase the z-index, somehow your element would show on the top and it won't be hidden. So that's what I used to do. And I always say that half knowledge is really dangerous, because if you don't understand something, then you're gonna have to do a lot of guesswork and try a lot of things randomly to figure things out. So you'll be wasting a lot of time. Go understand z-index and how exactly it works so you can predict where your element is going to be. So that's what we're gonna do today. And welcome to Texit Tutorials. Alright, so to understand z-index, you have to understand a very important property in CSS called position. And let's take a practical example to understand it. So let's say if you have a classroom with a bunch of rows, and you have a bunch of students standing outside the classroom, and teacher's job is to make them sit inside or have some sort of order, right? So what teacher would do as the student coming in, they are going in the front of the class. So the last student would sit at the back, and then the first student would sit at the front. You maintain the natural order. CSS has also the same thing. By default, it has a position called static, which means don't interfere. The element that are defined first would be visible on the top, and the element that are defined at the bottom would be visible at the bottom. So let's do some coding and understand it before we understand z-index. Alright, so here I have 4 elements, A, B, C, and D. And A is first and D is last. That's how they define. And I haven't provided any CSS yet, but if I execute them, then they would show up in the order they are defined, right? So A is first and then D is last. And let's add some CSS so that we can visually see where they are. For all of them, width is, let's say, 50 pixels, and height is also 50 pixels, so we can see them clearly. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to have each element different background color. So for A, I can say background color is, let's say, red. B, I have it green, yellow, and let's make it blue. So now if I see them, I would see 4 blocks. Now I can see exactly what's going on. Now if I look at the position by inspecting the element, I would see position static. Okay, so now let's say our student D here, he's a rich kid. His father wants him to sit in the front. So the teacher, since he got some donation, teacher has to now make him sit in the front. So how do you do that? One way to do it is change its position. Now again, we don't want to move A, B, C. We just want to put D in the front, right? So let's do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the position of D to absolute. And I'm going to put him on the top. So I'll say top 0. When I do that, D would sit in the front. But now A is somehow underneath. You cannot really put D in the front without moving A. But if you want to do that way, then you have to create some sort of another layer on the top of it, where A is still in the front, but D is sitting on another layer, or another floor, should I say. Okay, in the front. So now if I look at from the top, I would see D first, and underneath I would see A, if I could see, depend on the size, right? So that's what's happening here. So using position absolute, I can place an element out of order or wherever I like. So this kind of elements are called position element. You can use position relative, position fixed, position sticky. These are all called position element. Now let's do one thing. If I take all the positions except maybe A, make the other elements, for the rest of the elements except A, they are position absolute, except A. All right, so I don't really need the position absolute here. Well, I have to also say top 0. This way it's placed on the top. So now A is position static, B, C, D, they're position absolute, and they're all in a different floor, except A, it's sitting on still on that static floor. But what happens when you have three different elements, three different positioned element on the same floor, on the same position? What really happens there? So they are on the same floor, but they're on the top of each other. So the last one, in that case, the last one that is position absolute, it's going to be visible, right? So here I have B, C, and D, but D is going to be, is showing because it's the last one. So on that floor, there is an order that matters, okay? Now if I just move them a little bit, so if I can say 5 pixels, here it would be, let's say 10 pixels, and here it would be, let's say 15 pixels. So I can see the orders in that they are. So the green is first, which is coming first because B is first. Defined, C is second, and D is last. And so basically B, C, D on the same floor, A is on a different floor. So this is called stacking order because you are stacked in the order that you are received. Now again, from B, C, and D, I don't want D to be showing on the top. I want B to be showing on the top. Can you do something about it? So that's where the Z index come in the picture. Now from that order, those position element, I can change the B element to show in the front by simply changing its Z index. So right now, what is the Z index of all three? And that is auto. So if I look at it, so Z index is auto for B, C, and D. And think of auto means almost like a 0. So let's change Z index of B. So they all are kind of 0. Now we're gonna change Z index of B to be 1, which is higher than B and C's. So now if I run it, B element, which is green, is showing on the front. Now what really happens? Think of this way. Now it's creating another floor called Z index equal to 1, right? Z index auto is another floor. Now Z index 1 is another floor, and it's putting that B on there. So it's kind of going out of order again. But remember, A, which is position static, will always stay at the bottom because it's not a positioned element. Now what are the possible values that you can have for Z index? You can only have it as an integer, which means full numbers, no floating points. You can have 0 or positive numbers or negative numbers. So you can have negative numbers also, but it has to be full number. So let's say if I do 1.5 here, it will completely ignore the Z index. So if I run this, again, it will maintain the natural order. So B, C, and D would be in that order because it doesn't understand what the floating point is in regard of a Z index. Now I also can get as high as possible, you know, and it would still work. And let's say if I have a Z index for the next one to be 1 more than B, let's say 3 here, and if I run it, then the yellow would show up because I have that highest Z index. Now what if I want the static element, which is A, to be shown on the top? Is there any way? Yes, you can do that. You have to remember the 0th floor. So there is a static floor and then the auto floor, which is like a Z index 0, and then Z index 1, 2, 3, like this. So if I want to show this position element to below the static floor, I have to make them negative. So let's say if I do -1, all of them, then they're on the same floor, which is one below the static. And so if I run this now, the red shows up first, which is static, and all the position elements are at the bottom. So this is how the index really work. And if you want to know more about the position property, I have a tutorial on it, so you can understand different positions like position relative versus position absolute versus position fixed. I'll provide a link here somewhere on the top here so you can look at it. And I hope you learned something from this tutorial. If you did, please like, don't forget to like, subscribe, and provide a nice comment. And you can help the channel via Patreon. I'll provide a link here. And you can also translate the video if you want to your native language. I'll provide instructions in the description. And thank you.